Good evening. Welcome to the North Shore and Brocklehurst Elementary School Community Round 1 Zoom consultation. I just want to begin by respectfully honoring and acknowledging that we are meeting in the unceded territory and lands of the Secwepemc people, where we live, love, and learn every day. And on the screen, you will see the people who are talking this evening. I'm Rhonda Nixon, Superintendent, and then to my right on the screen, I'll just have you introduce yourselves.
Bill Hamlet, Assistant Superintendent of Secondary Schools.
Grant Riley, Assistant Superintendent of Early Learning and Elementary Schools.
Bessie Mochikas, Assistant Superintendent, Inclusive Education.
Art McDonald, Director of Facilities.
And thank you. That is our team this evening. We do have another team displayed on the screen, and there's even more behind these if we wanted to be honest. So a lot of people have put effort into this evening's presentation. We thank especially all of our support this evening. We have moderators here, we have people recording, we have IT, so thank you. Our engagement process in round 1 is that, which is what we're starting this evening, is to provide you with information and an opportunity through a moderator to share your comments or questions. So during the session, please submit questions through the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen for most of you, or you'll see the tab Q&A. As time permits at the end of the presentation, I will read questions out loud and answer those that we can answer. However, it is possible we will have more questions than what we can answer in the session. So any questions not answered will be added to the frequently asked questions summary on the SD73 website. I shall say too at this time, this entire presentation will be made available afterwards, and it is available on the website. So I just want to walk you through where you would find it. If you go to our website, right at the very on the very front web page, you'll see this picture, the grade and catchment changes sign. And if you click on it, it will take you to another page, which leads you to the FAQs right at the bottom. And it's there that we will be posting all of the FAQs that we're not able to answer this evening or that were sent in. And even by email, we get some and we answer. We just rejuvenate the page. In addition, you will see if you want to submit questions, if you look at the top here, you can submit questions at that point. If you want to watch recordings, the second one down below that, you can watch recordings like this one this evening. And then the one below that is to see the further round 1 and 2 community engagement sessions. So round 2 for elementary is June 1st. And you can submit to present 5-minute public presentation of questions and or comments, and you would submit them to Dana Heyman at dheyman@sd73.bc.ca. And of course, we have sent this in an email, and all of this information is available on our website. The purpose this evening is to share this presentation that has been shared with focus groups in the Brocklehurst and North Shore communities. To share their feedback on the recommendations within it is a second goal, and to respond to comments and feedback that you may have this evening. We have a Board of Education comprised of 9 elected school trustees. And in Board Policy 2, it is the Board of Education who is responsible for catchment changes and grade reconfigurations, and for community engagement as outlined in Administrative Procedure 135. So I'm charged as a superintendent with the responsibility of explaining the issue under consideration, the objectives and criteria for considering the reconfiguration, options being considered and supporting information, and the process for school community engagement. Just to give you a little bit of background, on June 14th, 2021, the board received a report in which it was explained that the expected enrollment of Brocklehurst Middle School was to increase each year and peak at 936 students by 2028. And at that time, the board requested further in-depth study of whether Brocklehurst Middle School was too large. Since that board meeting, we have engaged in 28 consultations with the communities of Brocklehurst and North Shore and conducted research into the size of middle schools provincially. Brocklehurst Middle School is the 9th largest middle school provincially, and the Brocklehurst staff, administration, and parents have spent the last few months reviewing this question by sharing their experiences, and they have confirmed that they are too large as of now.
When we look at the projected enrollment at Brock Middle School, the overall trend continues to be increased growth, with the average size of middle schools in the province of British Columbia averaging between 550 to 600. And this, again, as mentioned before, ranks Brock Middle School as one of the larger middle schools in the province. Due to the concerns regarding the size of Brocklehurst Middle School, we examined whether we need to complete the catchment changes and grade reconfigurations on the North Shore and Brocklehurst, coinciding with the opening of the new Parkcrest Elementary School in the spring of 2024. When we consulted with the Brock staff and community in the PAC, the issue was the majority of staff felt that the school population is too big to manage, and when they looked ahead, they were asking for a change to address it. The request was to reconfigure to a grade 8 to 12 school. The positives they identified were an increased sense of community, having the students for 5 years, having the athletics on par with other schools in the district, and consistent across the district in its grade configuration. It would leverage staff expertise, increase collaboration. They're looking forward to a refresh of Brock Middle School and the hope of opening up electives in the senior grades. The challenges, of course, is change is hard, and they would need time to prepare and resources. We did a similar consultation with the NORCAM PAC and NORCAM staff, and they supported as well a grade 8 through 12 reconfiguration when Parkcrest opens. The positives they identified were similar. School culture could be built and school spirit could also be built, knowing the students longer over those 5 years of education. It would also leverage staff expertise at NORCAM. There would be a diversity of students from a catchment change, and that was felt as a good thing. It would build relationships between students, staff, and parents. The International Baccalaureate program would have longer to develop, and there would be consistencies between the schools. The challenges the staff saw was change is hard, and we need time to prepare, and we need resources.
At the regular public board meeting on May 1st, the board passed the following motions. Motion 1, to consult the North Shore and Brocklehurst staff and parent communities about the reconfiguration of the current grades for the following schools. Brocklehurst Middle School, grade 7 to 9, to become a grade 8 to 12 school in September 2024. I want to highlight 2024. This is not for next year, but the following year. NORCAM Senior Secondary School, grade 10 to 12, becomes an 8 to 12 school in September 2024. A.E. Perry, Arthur Hatton, Bert Edwards, K. Bingham, Parkcrest Elementary, and Rayleigh each become K to 7 schools in September 2024. Motion 2, to consult the North Shore and Brocklehurst staff and parent communities about the proposal to reopen George Hilliard as a K to 7 school in September 2024. Motion 3, to consult the North Shore and Brocklehurst staff and parent communities about the proposal to engage in a catchment change for the following schools in September 2024. Brocklehurst Middle School, NORCAM Senior Secondary School, A.E. Perry, Arthur Hatton, Bert Edwards, K. Bingham, Parkcrest, and Rayleigh. Parkcrest Elementary School is to be completed by December 2023, and that resulted in motion 4, to consult the North Shore and Brocklehurst staff and parent communities about the proposal to reopen Parkcrest Elementary School as K to 7 in the spring of 2024 at 2170 Parkcrest Avenue.
So as we've been working through the proposed catchment changes, we've looked at 2 options and they both center around George Hilliard. The first one is if George Hilliard opens as a K to 7 school. So what you see in front of you is the proposed catchment boundaries for the schools, and I will start from right to left on the screen. On the right side is the Arthur Hatton catchment in red, and it does not change from the current catchment boundary. You'll notice that Bert Edwards is at the top right of your screen, and it's shown there just to show the location of the school. It does not have a catchment boundary as it's a school of choice. Moving one to the left is the A.E. Perry boundary in the cyan color, and it runs from basically Nicolani to 8th Street. George Hilliard is in the pink color and runs from Desmond over to Nicolani. K. Bingham is the yellow boundary, and it runs from Windbreak over to Desmond, and it also encompasses a portion of Young over to Shriner. And Parkrest is in the red boundary on the left side. And you'll also note that the Brock-Norcam boundary follows the proposed George Hilliard A.E. Perry boundary, and we always line up secondary boundaries with elementaries so that when the kids move on to high school, they don't get split up. This is just a higher resolution image of the proposed A.E. Perry George Hilliard boundary. And you can see it divides the backyards along Nicolani and Olick. And then when we get down to Tranquil, it moves over to Cambridge Crescent. The George Hilliard K. Bingham boundary follows Desmond up to Fleetwood and then jogs over because of Oxford and Inglewood. There was no way to split that without breaking the street up. Then we've got the K. Bingham Parkrest boundary. Again, this follows Windbreak up from Parkrest Avenue all the way down to basically the backyards along Young Street and then heads west over to Shriner. And what we've done is 10-year enrollment projections for the proposed catchment change, and these are in the format of capacity utilization numbers. Capacity utilization is just the enrollment of the school divided by the capacity of the school. Higher numbers are more full and lower numbers are less full. And you can see in this case in 2024, George Hilliard would be at 74%, K. Bingham at 66, Parkrest at 78. And moving down to the NORCAM zone, A.E. Perry at 95, Arthur Hatton at 94, Burt Edwards at 80, Heffley at 10%, Rayleigh at 79%, and Sun Peaks at 92%. Now, in these enrollment projections, we have assumed that the grade 7s will be staying at their current school for the 2024 year, and the grade 12s will be staying at NORCAM for their 2024 year. And you'll also notice if you look at Brock and NORCAM, there's quite a discrepancy in 2024 in the capacity utilization. And again, that is due to the grandfathering for NORCAM, but you'll notice those two high schools balance out as the years move on. So for this option, we've prepared some of the pros and cons that we see. The pros in the left side, it fixes Brock Middle School is too big, fewer portables at the elementary schools compared to the second option. More students at Brocklehurst Secondary because of where the catchment boundary is further east, which gives us better balance between the secondary school enrollments. And more room for growth in the elementary schools. The cons, the catchment line along Nicolani is quite close to A. Perry. So that may result in transfer requests going back to A. Perry. Similarly for NORCAM Secondary. And one or more TREC programs that are currently located in the Happyvale building may need to be relocated due to space constraints. And this also results in more catchment changes for the elementary schools. So option 2 is what would happen if George Hilliard does not open as a K-7 school, but we move the TREC programs back in. And for those that don't know, TREC was in George Hilliard prior to the Parkrest fire and were relocated to provide a home for the Parkrest students. So similar to the first option, these are the catchment maps. The elementary catchment areas do not change in this option. They stay as they currently are. And the Brock-Norcam boundary moves over to Sing Street to align with the K. Bingham A.E. Perry catchment boundary. And similar to the first option, these are the capacity utilization numbers. Again, assuming that grade 7s stay at their current school for 2024 and the grade 12 students stay at NORCAM for 2024. We will highlight some of the differences between the two options on a further slide. And again, you'll see that there's a big disparity between Brock and NORCAM in this option that continues out into the future. And again, that's because the catchment boundary is further west. So the pros for this option is, again, it fixes the Brock Middle School is too big issue. The elementary catchment boundaries remain as is. Sing Street was the previous boundary between Brock and Norcam prior to 2010. All of the Trek programs would stay together at George Hilliard, and this option requires the least change for all involved. The cons are more portables are required at the elementary schools, fewer students at Brocklehurst Secondary and more at Norcam, which results in less balanced enrollments between the high schools and less room for future growth in the elementary schools without a significant number of portables. So on this slide, what we've done is just a side-by-side comparison. The side on the left is what would happen if George Hilliard becomes K-7 in 2024. On the right is what happens if George Hilliard becomes Trek again in 2024. So a couple that I'll point out. On the first option on the left, K Bingham would be at 66%. On the right, K Bingham becomes 99% with one portable. For the first option, A Perry would be at 95%. And the second option, it's 117% with two portables.
Twin Rivers Education Center, as previously mentioned, is located at the Happyvale location and currently has 3 programs running out of it. 4 Directions is an academic program run through an Indigenous lens. It is an all-day program. Bridges is a transition program for students who need a little extra time and support, making the transition from elementary to middle or secondary school. And finally, the alternative education program has students who attend for mornings only, afternoons only, and a small percentage of students who attend all day. In discussing and consulting with the Trek staff, the feedback really centered around space and programming pressures that currently exist in their location, along with an expectation that they thought they were moving back the staff to the George Hilliard school once Parkrest was reopened. We stated as a district team at that time that we would engage in thorough consultation with all Trek staff and continue consultation with each school community and then report back to the Board of Education. Again, the senior team returned to Trek after meeting individually with each staff member who wanted to meet to review the recommendations and provide feedback. The result was that the majority of Trek staff supported all 3 recommendations, including recommendation 2 to make George Hilliard a K-7 school in September 2024. There were, however, concerns to work through. We have acknowledged that there are concerns regarding space and programming, and the staff is working closely with the principal to identify the needs of the staff in order to improve student learning and the environment for their students. In addition to those concerns that the staff is working through, transportation was identified as an issue in that sometimes city buses are full and keep going, routes are canceled, or the bus exchanges have some concerning behavior. So Director McDonald and Director Chris Jansen are looking at utilizing buses for common pickup and drop-offs in the morning and afternoon for those Trek students. The staff at that time supported an additional recommendation, which was Bridges will move to Brocklehurst Middle School, possibly as early as September 2023, or to Brock Secondary in September 2024. At this time, the other 2 programs, 4 Directions and Alternative Education, would remain in Happyvale for 2023-2024. The Aboriginal Education Council consists of representatives from the 7 local First Nations and Métis populations. As over 50% of the students attending Trek are Indigenous, there were points that the Aboriginal Education Council wanted the district to hear as feedback. The first was centered around the current location for Trek. It is appreciated that students can attend a smaller location, as that's thought to be better. And parents believe that that's important, that they have the smaller building and sense of community. In terms of programming, the Trek programs have a focus on outdoor education in their electives and active engagement, which is well aligned to Aboriginal ways of knowing and doing and the First Peoples principles of learning. And they appreciated that the current facility and programming allows for that cultural knowledge and understanding. They did have a concern. They appreciate the academies that are currently run out of Brock and wanted us as a district to look at continuing and expanding those opportunities. And again, they wanted to ensure that students coming from different communities would have the appropriate transportation to get to school safely each day. So motion 5 was to consult the North Shore and Brocklehurst staff and parent communities about the proposal to move bridges to Brocklehurst Secondary, grade 8 to 12, and to keep alternative education in 4 directions at Happy Vale by September 2024.
5 main themes emerged from the consultation with elementary staff. As you heard from Director McDonald, the option of opening George Hilliard would facilitate a catchment change that would shift approximately 50 students currently in the Parkrest catchment into K Bingham's catchment to balance enrollment, as K Bingham would be quite small initially. Staff expressed concern that these students would be moved once in the spring of 2024 when Parkrest reopens, and again back to K Bingham in September of 2024 when the catchment change would come into effect. The second theme that emerged was empathy for Trek students. Elementary staff recognized the space and program concerns that Trek students and staff face, and recognized as well the ongoing work Assistant Superintendent Mochikas is doing to help address these concerns. The third theme was concern about the space pressures in elementary schools, particularly A. Perry and K. Bingham. Staff shared how limited space makes serving students with complex needs more challenging. Staff also wondered if there would be district support to help teachers and support staff move should Parkrest reopen mid-year. District staff confirmed that staff would be supported both with resources and additional staff to support this move. The final theme that was shared was the need for the reconfiguration and catchment plan to be sustainable in the long term. District staff confirmed that sustainability was a goal of the North Shore reconfiguration plan that would be recommended to the board. Coming out of this feedback is motion 6, which reads, to consult the North Shore and Brocklehurst staff and parent communities about the proposal to provide the choice to Parkrest Elementary students and their siblings who, prior to September 2024, live in the proposed new Bingham Elementary catchment area as presented to attend Parkrest Elementary School and to the end of their elementary program in grade 7. And we are talking about the students and the addresses located in the blue box to the left of the motion.
When we presented the feedback that you have had presented to you this evening, the board expressed concerns about K Bingham being at a capacity utilization of 50%. So one option that was suggested was to provide the Parkrest students who would be in K Bingham catchment as of 2024 the option to move earlier, like September 2023. When we considered that suggestion, if you look to the right under responses and discussion, it would cause K Bingham to be at a capacity utilization of 114% for 2023, which would require 2 portables. Therefore, it wouldn't solve the issue initially, but it would prevent the school from decreasing suddenly and create more stability between 2023 and 24. One trustee commented that we can explain the 50% as due to extraordinary circumstances. And our team has also discussed how we could continue to recommend to the board supports that could be put in place. The question is 172 students a viable elementary school? And this was discussed at some length. We do have schools that are that size, and we do have schools who are viable at that size. But this is a question that remains in our minds throughout this consultation period. The board also suggested that Parkrest reopen in September 2024 as a possibility, and they asked us to examine it. So to your right, under responses and discussion, here are some of the implications if Parkrest did not open until September 2024. It would mean that a brand new school, Parkrest, would be empty for 9 months, which does not look good politically, given that we have a space constraint within our district and it's well known, and we need new schools and we need the space. We would need to consider the time needed to prepare for the reopening of Parkrest and the reopening of George Hilliard. So imagine if everything stays at George Hilliard. The principal of Parkrest could start at the new location and begin to prepare the school by ordering and receiving resources, furniture, and so on. George Hilliard students who are to go to K Bingham are still going to be introduced to the new school and then having to move to K Bingham. So it does not solve the 50 students feeling upset about the move. It also means that the George Hilliard principal does not have time to welcome and transition the students into the school to create a sense of community. We have an advisory committee comprised of representatives from all groups, including the board. And that advisory committee gets together to review feedback periodically and then give their perspectives and to ask questions as part of the consultation process. If you look at the left-hand side, change is about choosing to be positive. So there was a lot of discussion about the fact that change is hard. When it took place a decade ago, the first year was bad, but then it went better. And many stories flowed from the fact that no matter what we do in a catchment change, there will be people who have to undergo change. And we have to find a way to transition and help them. The second conversation really was about imagining different scenarios. So one of the committee members said, grade 9s this year become grade 10 next year and go to NORCAM in 2023-24. And then it is possible that they may need to return to Brock in grade 11 and then graduate in Brock. So 2 changes was thought to be a lot. When we discussed it, to let grade 11s in 2024-25 and NORCAM stay along with the grade 12s would mean that NORCAM would reach 993 students in 2024-25 and be at 97% capacity utilization. Brock would have 456 students and be at a 54% capacity utilization. For anyone who's been a principal or has been in a school that is a secondary school that decreases to that capacity utilization, we have difficulties with teams, we have difficulties with programming. So of course, that is not an ideal solution. Those are implications to prolonging the process of moving into the catchment change. That said, the advisory committee had to come to some considerations and decisions that day. They did support the 6 recommendations, which are now motions, including letting the 50 students stay at Parkrest. They recommended managing the 50% capacity at K Bingham by investing funds to make it work until the enrollment increases. I'd like to expand on this a little bit. It is true that K Bingham would be at 50% or so, approximately, when they open, if those 50 students stay behind. But remembering that that capacity utilization will increase over time. The thought of the committee was that investing funds to ensure that the supports and staffing could stay in place would be something the board could consider. The third point, be upfront about the current grade 9s who go into grade 10 in 2023-24 as having 1 year at NORCAM and then potentially returning to Brock. This needs to be understood from the outset, and it needs to be explained that in order to make this catchment change work and to balance the enrollment between the schools, it's necessary. But help those students to see the benefits. They know the teachers, they have friends, they're exposed to the trade center and IB, and they are senior for 2 years and then return as seniors in their final year. In summary, overall, elementary and secondary staffs and PACs supported recommendations 1, 2, 3, and 4, and we are only starting now to review recommendations 5 and 6. TREC staff were not all present for the reviews of information on April 13th, and there is still some trepidation about remaining in Happy Vale, which was recommendation or now motion 2. Sun Peaks has a unique history, and it's worth taking a moment to understand it. In 2012 to 13, Sun Peaks became a K-5 school. And if you avert your eyes to the right, its designated catchment school for elementary was 2. It had Sun Peaks for K-5 and then Rayleigh for grade 6 students. And then looking another column over, for grades 7, 8, and 9, the designated school was Brocklehurst Middle School. And then again to the next column over, for grades 10 to 12, it was NORCAM Senior Secondary School. In 2013 and 14, the school grew to K-6. At this stage, Sun Peaks became its only designated elementary school. Brocklehurst Middle School remained its designated school for 7, 8, and 9, and Norcam Senior Secondary for grades 10 to 12. 2017-18, it becomes a K-7 school. So it is its own designated school, Sun Peaks K-7. It has Brocklehurst Middle School as the designated catchment school for grades 7, 8, and 9, and Norcam Senior Secondary for grades 10 to 12. 2020-21, we now have K-9 in Sun Peaks. It is now its own designated school as K-9. Now here's where the change is, looking to the right. So 8 and 9 students, grades 8 and 9 students are designated to Sun Peaks K-9. And the designated catchment school for grades 10 to 12 is Norcam Senior Secondary. And just, look down to the very bottom of the screen where there is, we stand in the catchment change. So in 2024, nothing changes for Sun Peaks at this stage. Sun Peaks remains its own catchment school for both grades 6 and 7 and 8 and 9. And also the 10 to 12 would continue to go to Norcam Senior Secondary. Therefore, to complete the corporate memory on this catchment change and grade reconfiguration, the board passed a motion 7 to consult the Sun Peaks community about the recommendation to have the board approve that grades 10, 11, and 12 Sun Peaks students continue to have Norcam Secondary, which would then be grade 8 to 12, as their designated catchment area high school in the fall of 2024. The board also saw fit to pass motion 8 to consult the Sun Peaks community about the recommendation to have the board approve Sun Peaks School K-9 to continue as the designated catchment area school for K-9 Sun Peaks students in the fall of 2024. Sun Peaks students in grades 8 and 9 who prefer to attend Brocklehurst or Norcam secondary schools would adhere to the transfer process outlined in AP 305. The community engagement plan. If you look to the left on the community, the public spectrum of community engagement, we began with informing our community very early on in small focus groups about what the issue was. We worked with them to consult, just looking to the right of inform to the consult phase, where we got their feedback, we took their questions, we analyzed them, we presented alternatives, and we came up with different recommendations for the board. We kept everybody informed, listened to, documented, and we returned back and forth to those focus groups. We are now at the involved stage. We're working directly with a broader public engagement to share with you what we've learned so far about the public feedback and some of the questions and concerns. We want to work with you to hear your concerns, your aspirations, and we want to reflect those when we present to the board. Therefore, in round 1, we have met with Brocklehurst Middle School on May 4th, Norcam Senior Secondary, the entire community, parent and staff, on May 8th. And now May 9th, we've invited all elementary schools in Brocklehurst and North Shore to come together this evening. Tomorrow will be Trek, and on May 31st, it will be Sun Peaks and Heffley Creek. I want to point out, though, if you know of anyone who missed this evening, it is absolutely fine that they come tomorrow and be with us when we are with the Trek community, or on May 31st. So come and listen, learn about the issues, ask clarifying questions, offer your feedback, and you can email your feedback, check the growing FAQs, and you'll see shortly that we will have time to answer some questions and comments. So round 1, what happens next? Well, on May 15th, the Board of Education meets, and at that time in camera, we will present some of the concerns and the feedback we've had to date, as well as some of the insights and positive comments. We're not going to present new recommendations or motions. That's why it's not in public. We'll collect also at that time from the board their concerns, their questions, because they're part of the consultation too. By round 2, you will see that we will have an opportunity for you to submit to present in public, if you so choose, for 5 minutes. We will have 60 minutes reserved in each one of the sessions you see listed for 10 public presentations, and within those timeframes, also 30 minutes to answer questions and listen to feedback, and also to record for the opportunity to write the feedback in our FAQ section on the website. Now, if you look past that, you'll say, well, where are we headed? May 29th, the board will review feedback. Hopefully, and we really believe this, we will have saturated or come to some really clear pictures of what we can recommend to the board with good faith that we're representing our communities in a fulsome way. So hopefully by June 19th, it is our goal that the board will find that they can pass motions on recommendations and make public where we're headed in 2024. And finally, how can I join round 1 and 2? You would have received an email, and all families did, the week of May 2nd. You can check it. It would have been from Dana Heyman at sd73.bc.ca. School principals also were given that email so that they can include the information in their PAC meetings, in their newsletters, when you talk with them. Also, as presented earlier this evening on sd73.bc.ca website, all of this same information is easily accessible a click away. If you would like to present and you've lost track a little bit of what you're to do, don't worry, you just email and RSVP Dana Heyman. So dheyman at sd73.bc.ca, and she will help you to get ready to submit your presentation for round 2. And now at this stage in the evening, I'm going to start reading questions, and we will have some answers this evening. And for those we cannot answer, please know we will present those answers in FAQs, and on Fridays, we will aim for Fridays to send out an email to all families to let them know there's been an update. Question number 1, how does this affect district programs, trades, IB, and Brock academies? I will turn this over to Assistant Superintendent Hamlet.
Thank you for the question. The NORCAM senior trades programs have a TRU instructor. Those programs will remain at NORCAM, whether it's a senior secondary school or a secondary school. The academy programs at Brock will remain. If it goes to become a secondary school, there may be the opportunity to expand those academies into senior grades. That can be looked at. And in terms of the IB program at NORCAM, it will remain at NORCAM. Students from across the district can join the IB program in grade 11, just like the district programs are open, trades programs are open to all students in the district.
Thank you. And this is a comment and a question. Another North Shore school is obviously needed, whether it is George Hilliard or a new school. Is the difficulty the district has had in getting new schools funded part of the consideration of reopening George Hilliard? I will start that answer, and then I will open it up to Director McDonald to add if he so chooses. At this time, when we look at the ministry requirements, when we have space and we have a school available, we are expected to use that space. So Parkrest community has a replacement school they're moving into, which would enable George Hilliard to be used by our jurisdiction. It would be an expectation that we would use that space. I'm going to offer Director McDonald any other comments.
Yes, thank you, Superintendent Nixon. The other thing I would just go back to sort of why we're here. And the reason we're here is Brock is too big for a middle school. And no matter what 3-grade configuration we look at for a middle school option, it would still have roughly the same population. So when we looked at what were our options to deal with Brock Middle School, putting the grade 7s back into the North Shore and Brock Elementary schools was an option. And one thing we did here through consultation is that it's a popular option in that we are aligning the North Shore and Brock with the South Shore in terms of grade configurations. The implication of putting the grade 7s back is that does add some pressure back onto some of the existing schools. And so we need George Hilliard to try to take some space pressure off of A.E. Perry and K. Bingham in particular.
Thank you. I'll read question 3. Where do Rayleigh Elementary students go? So I will start and I will turn it over to Director McDonald if there's anything to add. Presently, Rayleigh Elementary schools students, pardon me, continue to go to secondary school at Norcam Secondary? Seeing nods of the panel, that's really all I think I need to say to that one. Where will kids who currently live in Bachelor or West Side who attend Brock Middle School attend secondary school in 2024? So I'll break this down. So Bachelor Heights students are designated to go to West Side Secondary School. If those students are attending Brock Middle School currently, they would continue to attend Brock Middle School if the principal deemed that they had the space to do so. I will turn it to the panel if there's anyone who would like to expand.
So if we have students attending Brock Middle from Bachelor and West Side, because Brock Middle is not the current catchment for both Bachelor and West Side, those students should have already completed a transfer request status, and that should have already been approved. If the transfer request status was completed and approved, under our AP 305, students would be able to stay at the school where they have been approved for a transfer request. So those students would be eligible to stay at Brock if it turns into an 8 to 12 school, even though their high school is still West Side Secondary.
That was very well done. The next question, will Rayleigh students get a choice between Brock and Norcam so that they can choose academy or trades? I'm going to break this into two. So will Rayleigh students get a choice between Brock and Norcam? I'm going to start this by addressing catchment area schools. Typically, a school has one designated secondary school, not two. Therefore, Rayleigh would not have a choice between Brock and Norcam. They would be designated to go to Norcam. As per Assistant Superintendent Riley's explanation, if you are a parent of a student who wants to attend a school that is not your designated secondary school, you may do so if you go to that principal and that principal has you complete a transfer request that is approved. So, do you have a choice? You have a choice within the confines of our AP 305. Can they choose academy or trades? These are district programs, and I will turn it over to Assistant Superintendent Hamlet to explain how you apply to an academy or trades program.
Thank you for the question. I'll start with the district trades programs and other district trades programs. For example, the hairstylist program at Norcam Senior Secondary, the district trades programs at Norcam Senior Secondary, or the data program at Valley View. All of those programs are for senior students and student supply. In terms of the academy programs at Brocklehurst Middle School, if it was to become a secondary school, students would also apply to attend. They would be dependent upon space, and they would have to fill out the transfer form as Assistant Superintendent Riley mentioned.
Next question, and we had multiple of exactly this question. Will there be bus service to Norcam for students from Arthur Hatton? And then there was a second question, but I'm going to just deal with the first one. At the present time, the Board of Education has approved in Policy 17 that we will optimize bus routes. And that means that all bus routes are going to be reviewed. And this feedback has been received not only in this session, but in others. So to determine whether or not we will provide bus service from Arthur Hatton and Norcam will be addressed as we proceed to and through consultation. So I don't have an answer now because we've had the question quite often. We've also had the question about whether we'll provide bus service for Trek students. These questions are important. We have contacted transportation. The transportation director and assistant manager are working diligently on looking at how they might meet these requests. How will SD 73 ensure safe transportation? Well, we ensure safe transportation by making bus routes that apply to our limits, our walk limits and our ride limits. And we ensure safe transportation for students when there's an issue by addressing that issue? This is quite a broad question, and I would love to know more. This is an example where you would be wise. I would hope you would not shy away from filling out the feedback form and providing me a little more context. So if you're having safety concerns on our buses, we would want to know that and the nature of it. Thank you. Is it possible to put an elementary school at Happyvale and move Trek elsewhere in town? You know, this has been something we've investigated thoroughly, and I'm actually going to turn this answer over to Director McDonald.
Yes, thank you, Superintendent Nixon. Yes, we have looked at this. One of the challenges with the Happyvale school, as it currently is it's a very small school. And if we were to look at a K-7 school, we would be looking at grades in and around 20 students per grade maximum. We were also asked, you know, what about a K-3 primary school? And one of the things we responded with was, through this reconfiguration, we are trying to match the grade configurations on the South Shore and the North Shore and Brock, and that would jeopardize that. The other thing we have to remember is the Trek students are School District 73 students, and we don't have anywhere else to put them at this time. Thank you.
If Rayleigh students get a transfer to Brock, will they be bused, or is it up to the parents to get them to school? I'm going to start this one, but I have experts in the room and they can certainly elaborate. At the time, when we have catchment area schools, those are the schools where we prioritize busing. However, in the transportation administrative procedure and policy, we have different options for students who require busing if there is a need for a courtesy ride, if there's a medical exemption. There's a number of considerations in that administrative procedure. I'm not going to get into articulating them, but we do not offer busing just because someone transfers to a new school, in a short answer. Panel just nodded, so I must have done all right. All right. Oh, this is very good. Okay. Does a lower percentage of students at an elementary school receive less funding and learning opportunities for students? We fund based on enrollment. So we have schools that are at that same number. In fact, I was at Clearwater Secondary today, and we used that in our public package as an example. So Clearwater Secondary has about the number of students that K Bingham would be at if it was reduced. And speaking with that principal today, he said, I'm creative about my programming. I look at different ways to combine students. I offer a large array of programming. When you look at an elementary school, it would be the same. Do I think that there would be a loss of learning opportunities? No, I think there would be different learning opportunities. I'm going to turn to Assistant Superintendent Riley if he would like to give some other examples or ideas.
Thanks, Superintendent Nixon. So unlike a secondary school, elementary schools are usually pretty standardized in terms of the learning programming that's offered. So it's not really what courses are available. Everything is offered because everybody's a generalist for the most part. So any kind of funding would not impact students' learning opportunities at an elementary school. In fact, fewer students might enable more kids the opportunity to participate in activities like young authors and young artists and Battle of Books and those kind of activities that are in all elementary schools.
That's very good. Now, this one's the same question, Assistant Superintendent Riley, but it's stated differently, so you have to listen closely. For example, if K Bingham really is at 50% for the school year, what is the implication?
Thanks again, Superintendent Nixon. So really just building on what I just said, it's very similar. So again, students still receive the same program they would receive in any other elementary school. They have opportunities to participate in activities, maybe more so than in other elementary schools that are larger. One of the implications would be it might be a challenge to have teams that are at the same level of schools that have more enrollment.
Good. Oh, yes, we have had this question before, and I'll just verbalize it here. Have you considered making Burt Edwards, which is a choice school, and moving that group of students to the George Hilliard location and opening up Burt Edwards as a catchment area school? It seems like Arthur Hatton will be higher in the next few years. This is very astute, the individual who wrote this. And yes, we have had extensive looks at the numbers. And I'm going to actually turn this one over to Director McDonald.
Thank you. So we have had various questions about the use of Burt Edwards and should it be a school of choice? And we've had other possibilities presented to us. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but I think about half of the students attending Burt Edwards actually live in the local catchment. And the other half come from other areas of the city. So doing this, we still have the trek problem to deal with. They would have to stay at Happy Vale, and we would likely have George Hilliard being very underutilized with this suggestion.
Thank you. And just giving you a moment to write some more questions, and we'll just give the group a moment to, moderators a moment to get the next one ready. Would it be possible for those students going to NORCAM only for grade 10 to stay at Brock for their grade 10 year? You know, sorry, I didn't turn my mic on. I apologize. I'll try again. Would it be possible for those students going to NORCAM only for grade 10 to stay at Brock for their grade 10 year?
Well, I think the challenge is the year we're talking about, grade 10 doesn't exist at Brock yet. So because we haven't made the reconfiguration, so it wouldn't actually be a possibility.
No, thank you. Has Rayleigh, Heffley, and Sun Peaks considered their own high school for those three schools? Would it be possible with current enrollment? So I can speak to that. Sun Peaks does not have a high school other than the designated NORCAM senior secondary. They have an academy that exists for those students who choose to go online, and it is an academy, which is just like all of our academies where it's by application and by choice. So their designated high school is actually presently and will continue to be NORCAM Senior Secondary School. So this is a rather difficult question to answer, but I will ask it, and it depends which school you're talking about. Would the changes reduce the number of split classes?
So as Superintendent Nixon said, that's a difficult question to answer because really the configuration of multi-grade classes depends on a number of things. We can have large enrollments in schools and we can still have varying numbers of students throughout the grades, which causes us to be into some multi-grade scenarios. As well, we are bound by some collective agreement language around class size and composition that provides a little less flexibility for us in terms of how we manage and set up classes. I will say that generally larger schools, so schools with larger enrollment, are able to maneuver around multi-grade classes better, but that isn't necessarily the case in all areas.
Just give people another minute or two if they have any more questions. Feel free to take a moment. I've just been informed by the moderator that we have quite a number of questions that are coming in that are not related to the catchment change. We will still receive those questions. We actually record them all and they will be addressed. But in the spirit of respecting the reason for tonight, I'll just keep going with the questions that we have. But I just don't ever want someone who's making a comment or taking the time to ask a question to think it's going to be ignored. It won't be. Our team reviews them every single morning, and then we divide them up and we research them and get answers. So please don't feel saddened by not hearing your question, because we do care about them. All right, the next one is, any thought about making Heffley a high school for Sun Peaks and Rayleigh? I will say this, I haven't myself, and I will say it for me, and then I'll turn it over to our more experienced panel members in terms of the history of SD 73. I have not heard this question. This is an example of a very insightful question, one that gives us ideas, right? But I will say we have not contemplated this in our team here, but I bet you someone like Director McDonald probably has. So go ahead, Director McDonald.
Thank you. No, I haven't thought about this as an option. I think there's a few challenges with Heffley Creek Elementary being a high school. It does not have the facilities that a typical high school would have, or even a small rural high school, in that the gym is not high school size. There's no capacity for shops, home ec rooms, those type of things. And we also on our capital plan do have a new K-12 school for the Sun Peaks area in our capital plan, which would deal with their high school needs when that school is built.
Yeah, very well stated. And we had multiple asking that exact question. So thank you to those individuals who have asked it in a few different ways, and our moderators are reviewing. So thank you. Will the current Brock students have the option to stay at Brock through 10 to 12? Do they just request to stay? I will actually start this one. And if you recall in the presentation, that was asked by the advisory committee, who asked about, would it be possible to actually keep all of the students for 3 years and really avoid affecting change? And what we uncovered is it would make a very, very imbalanced enrollment between Brock and Norcam, and actually not really be feasible, because one school would be plummeting to below 50% and the other one would be going up higher than 85 and 90% and possibly higher. So remembering that this catchment change, and I have to remind myself of this as well, is to balance enrollment. So that's why allowing it to just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger actually exacerbates the problem or the issue that we were setting out to resolve. And it's also not respecting a couple of things. Brock Middlehurst School, that community spent months talking with us about what we could do. A lot more supports were put in, a lot of work has been put in. And even after that, that community has stated they're getting too big. So in respecting the issue, if we don't actually complete the catchment change for multiple years, we are actually making that problem worse. The next question, will Brock change to a semester timetable or stay linear? Now, I know the answer to that, but you can give a far more detailed one, Assistant Superintendent Hamlet.
Thank you, Superintendent Nixon. And it's a great question. All of the secondary schools within the city and rural secondary schools are semestered. So one of the benefits of that is students are able to access district programs like the NORCAM Trades Program and programs up at TRU through the trades programs and other opportunities. So Brock would become a semester timetable, just like all the other secondary schools, to facilitate that ability for students to transfer to district programs, attend university programs, things like that.
All right, so we have another question. What will the catchment be for the new Sun Peaks K-12 school? Well, excellent question. We wait until we actually have funding for a school. And we look at the overall enrollment patterns within our jurisdiction, and then we assess where and when the catchment change needs to occur. I will let or encourage Director McDonald to provide some additional information.
Thank you, Superintendent Nixon. I think you answered the question quite well. It's a bit premature to have a K-12 catchment boundary for a school that's potentially a number of years away. I would anticipate it would somewhat mirror the K-9 current boundaries, but expand to grades 10, 11, and 12 as well once we get there. Thank you.
If the configuration goes through, do we know where the catchment for Brock will end and catchment for NORCAM will begin? We do. Director McDonald.
Yeah, probably the easiest thing I can suggest is to go to our website. The catchment maps have been posted there, and you can see them in a bit more detail than I can describe.
Thank you, Director McDonald. And I do want to second that. Even working with the media, they found it very easy to understand when they could look at the picture, very hard to explain verbally. This is a great question for Assistant Superintendent Hamlet. Will semester timetables affect Brock academies?
Thank you for the question. Having been in a school as a principal and a vice principal, I know that schools can timetable linear courses within a semestered base, as well as double blocking something so students can access a pool or a rink or something like that during a semester program. So it should not, the semester system should not affect the academies. I'm sure they could timetable around that.
Well, I have to say, I really appreciate everybody's questions this evening. Our moderators are very, very happy, but now they're looking at me saying, nope, we're not done. So just give us one more moment, please. Thank you. So I'm just going to back up the presentation to answer this question. So near the front, it's where do you find the maps? So you find the maps by going to, let me go to the very front of the presentation. So when you look at the front of our website, www.sd73.bc.ca, when you click on that big icon, you will get to a web page, and when you scroll down, I'm not able to do it here, but when you scroll down below on this one, you'll see the maps. Also, you can see them when you go to the FAQ section, you press on that, it says here, And then you go to just below that, you also get to the maps. So we make sure that the maps are easy. If you have any difficulty at all, Dana Heyman is very happy to help. And honestly, here you go, dheyman@sd73.bc.ca. We're happy to help you. And the maps are easy to find, but I know if you're frustrated and trying to find something, don't waste your time. We'll give you a hand. All right, on that note, I see that we have no more questions this evening regarding the catchment change and grade reconfiguration. We will close this evening by saying a very, very heartfelt thank you to all of you. For those of you who asked questions not related to this evening's topic, they will be read and they will be responded to. And on the FAQs, or if you have put in your personal identifying information, then we can respond to you directly. And we always appreciate your questions. So on that note, round 2 community engagement will be June 1st. And so feel free to join us then, and you will see the Zoom link. And as well, you will be sent a reminder by Dana Heyman. Have a great evening, everybody. Bye-bye.